So there are broken promises here that they have to deal with.
There are broken promises here, but there's also a structural reality that we've yet to recognize about the nature of the national debt here. We're talking about entitlement spending, service on the interest on our debt. Those are the two big categories of spending. That's a structural issue. We've made it worse, mind you, by going after all of these ridiculous policies. Not even so much the tax cuts. I think going after the tariffs in particular was ruinously expensive for the United States, not so much because the policy stuck and extracted so much wealth from the American people, but because they created this schizophrenia in the economy. People didn't know whether to invest or not. We built up inventories of things we didn't need. We completely disrupted global trade, and none of that has stopped. The real problem with carrying this level of debt is that it creates a great deal more financial uncertainty. And by not looking at this reality in the face and acknowledging all of the entitlement issues that will continue to get materially worse as our population ages and the economy continues to suffer under the weight of all of this economic burden, is that no one, not Democrats, not Republicans, seem to be at all interested in getting serious about tackling these things. At the same time that all of this is happening, we're having this democratic socialist revolution in this country where people are actually advocating for far more expensive policies than the ones that are already on the table and that are already bankrupting the country. No one is being particularly serious right now.
This is a really important point. We do not have a way to have a national conversation on this topic. I think you're right on the money there, sadly. You know, Bill Clinton, to his credit, made a big point of focusing on the question of the debt. Since then, it has left the national dialogue in so many ways. And now, because the world is about Trump and reaction to Trump and what's going to happen after Trump, there's going to be a long period, I think, of kind of healing and renewal potentially in the country. But getting us to this question of where are we going? Where are we going structurally? That is going to take most of a decade to even have the right conversation in this country.
Which is incredibly frustrating. I was in the room with Paul Ryan something like 14 years ago when he was making these animated videos about the two stories that we might be able to tell about where the country was headed in terms of this catastrophic debt cliff that we expected to go off of. Things aren't as bad as the worst predictions in those modeling, but they are pretty bad at the moment, and there's no one serious on the horizon.
And they ran him out of Washington.
They sure did.
They really did. And since then, you could argue that the Republican Party has largely abandoned this issue.
Yes.
Yes.
So, you know, even if you argue that Democrats don't care, it used to be that Republicans said that they cared, but now they don't even say that. I mean, you can either deal with the facts or you can ignore them and pretend like they're not happening. It just seems like a bad idea to ignore it.
There's also a lot of complementary data that ought to be taken into account. Credit card debt is up. People aren't making their payments as reliably as they were just a little while ago. There is quite a bit of consternation. And you talked about the rest of the stock market's performance. The market is pretty darn frothy at this point. There is quite a bit of concern about the elite tech stocks, even about the investments in AI that we're seeing. There's obviously plenty of enthusiasm. I'm a huge techno-optimist, and I want these companies to do well. But there are lots of questions about the profitability or the potential for profitability in companies like OpenAI and SpaceX, which IPO'd and didn't perform nearly as well.
And yet the other the other companies are raising their guidance on most of the Mag 7, most of the tech sector, huge capex spending, expanding data centers, compute.
May very well,
all good things. In fact, I would argue that we haven't had this much investment in a U.S. industry in a generation. Yeah. When you look at the broader AI, the broader data centers, the broader AI.
Here, let me just bring Michael Cohen also made a claim in his Substack and in an interview with Jake Tapper today, where he said, "I felt pressured and coerced to not only provide information and testimony that would satisfy the government's desire to build the cases against and secure a judgment and convictions against President Trump." Mm-hmm. This is one of the reasons that a lot of people said Michael Cohen's a terrible witness. You can't hang a case on him. Mm-hmm. What does this do? I mean, Ellie Honig earlier today said that this undermines that case, that hush money case against him.
And appropriately so. I think it was a politically motivated case. I'm happy to be critical of the president in any number of contexts, but this Stormy Daniels hush money thing always stunk to high heaven, and Michael Cohen obviously seemed like someone who was being extremely pressured to turn against the president in order to keep himself out of jail and further trouble. But this was one of several attempts to get the president on something like a tax evasion kind of circumstance. The thing about it is that the president of the United States, rather than having these things done to him and then demonstrating how this was politically motivated and not something that should happen, has doubled down on this tactic and has done it in the most extreme and absurd ways, going so far as to personally sue all sorts of people for saying things about him, and in many cases intimidating them into going about agreeing to settlements. I mean, it is heaping injury on top of injury and making our politics far, far, far worse and more toxic. But yeah, Michael Cohen does in fact have a point about those cases. The challenge for Michael Cohen and his newfound former friend, his erstwhile now restored friend, is that Donald Trump is continuing to do exactly the same sort of stuff. This is egregious and awful, and I think it undermines our best tradition in terms of jurisprudence
just to be clear, he says,
and integrity.
I felt pressured, okay? Not I was pressured.
He was facing jail.
I felt pressured. But yeah, but you, I mean, if you're going to claim you were pressured, then just say it. But he's saying I had a feeling, which is not the same thing as this was actually what happened.
Yeah, no.
A source tells CNN that the Navy is looking instead to name another warship after Miller and is recommending him for the Medal of Honor. Now, I think the family is supportive, obviously, of him being awarded the Medal of Honor, but for them to sort of take him out of the running in the near term in order to do something that would be unprecedented, which is to name an aircraft carrier after a sitting president, that says a lot.
Has the president suggested that this isn't his idea, which is usually the way this works? It's someone else who's responsible.
I don't think he's directly responded yet.
I find all of the self-aggrandizement that the president engages in and that the people around him insist on kind of heaping on him so incredibly uncomfortable and gross. It is the strangest thing that you want to be remembered and revered in this way while you're still alive, so you can be around to observe it all. It strikes me as someone who is just extremely self-conscious and unsure of himself. It just feels really, really weird. And I set aside, who is being displaced, since, again, in this particular context, it sounds like they may name another ship for him or give him some other honor. The real question here is why the president seems to insist that he needs to be the face on the passport, on buildings in D.C., on the money that we are currently spending. There's something about that that is weirdly self-obsessed.